What's up, everybody? Jesse here with Daniel once again for the Curiosity Shop, this segment on our podcast, the Hylians Gamescast, where we answer questions sent in from viewers like yourself. You can get your questions read if you comment them below on the video, or if you want priority, you can head over to patreon.com/GameOverJesse, where you can donate $1, $5, $10 if you're rich, $1 million to guarantee.
That would be amazing.
Yes.
Your question is first every week.
Yes,
$1 million.
To guarantee your question being read on the mailbag, or even if you have a specific topic you would like us to discuss, something related to Nintendo or gaming news in general, you can head over to Patreon. And also, I believe there should be a certain tier that if you donate $10, $20 a month, you can even join as a special guest to discuss all of the recent Nintendo news. And then not only would you be getting your question answered, but you would also be helping us talk about all of the news and answer all of the questions sent in. So now we finally, on the Curiosity Shop, are getting to the first question. So Daniel, what is our first question?
So this question comes from YouTube. Zombies Assassin asks, is Ganon the same person as Ganondorf, such as Calamity Ganon or Pig Form Ganon from the end of Ocarina of Time? My short answer is, I'm pretty sure yes. I think that I know for sure, at least we know for sure that Pig Form Ganon in Ocarina of Time is Ganondorf, because he transforms right before your very eyes. Calamity Ganon, I think so. I think he basically was reincarnating himself, and then I think it's said by Zelda in-game that he kind of gave up on having a physical form, and just like his reincarnation didn't pan out. And you can kind of see actually on the first stage of the boss fight with Calamity Ganon. Spoilers if anyone hasn't gone that far yet, but I mean the game's been out for like half a year now, guys. But his face is like almost like a skeleton face, but he has Ganondorf's hair and that headpiece that Ganondorf wears. So my belief is that that's him. He's kind of lost it. He's gone a little nuts. Maybe a little more. Maybe has lost his mind. Although I think now that I think about it, I believe that the King of Hyrule mentions that he was like very smart and cunning. I don't know, man. It's the same guy in my opinion. What do you think, Jesse?
So I have a bit of a different answer. I think.
Okay.
Now I don't really have any in-game text or lore, whatever, to back this up. Maybe somebody can help me, but. Now, I believe that Ganondorf and Ganon are two very distinctively different beings. Similar to, and this is going a little bit into a different nerd, or a different side of nerd culture.
That's okay, I'm
ready.
Think
about Yu-Gi-Oh!
Okay.
Alright, think about Yugi and Yami, I believe is his name. So there's like the boy Yugi, who has all the friends and stuff, but then he's wearing the necklace or whatever, and whenever he goes into some of the card battles, he lets the spirit of Yami, whatever his name was, it's been a long time since I watched Yu-Gi-Oh!, take control of his body. And he doesn't just take control of his body, but his appearance changes a little bit. He gets like a little bit more mature. You can tell it's a different person. And he's a better card player for some reason. So I think it's something very similar to where instead of using the necklace, he's using the Triforce of Power, which Ganondorf usually has all the time in most of the games.
This makes sense if I can back up your theory, because what's a game that he does not transform into Ganon? Wind Waker. Yeah. And in that game, I believe that he, during that final boss fight, does not have the Triforce of Power, because the King of Hyrule touches the Triforce.
Yeah.
Whereas in Ocarina of Time and Link to the Past and Twilight Princess, in games where you fight Ganon, he has the Triforce of Power.
Yeah. So
I got your back.
Skyward Sword, during the fight with Demise, kind of retconned a lot of the stuff. It's not just Ganondorf transforming into Ganon anymore. It's the spirit of Demise is like being passed on through different people and being reincarnated over and over again. I believe Ganon is the reincarnation, like the beast spirit, whatever you want to call it, of Demise. It's not necessarily like it's always in the different bad guys, whether it's like Vadi or whatever, and it's kind of like taking them on their path, like pushing them along in the right direction, similar to after the Skull Kid got Majora's Mask. He was still playing tricks and stuff on everyone, but now suddenly his tricks were more evil in nature. He wasn't just playing a joke on people, he was terrorizing them, cursing them. He wasn't just like, oh, I tripped
the
you.
Moon onto the tower.
Yeah. So in the same way, it's like Ganondorf wanted to like protect his people, the Gerudo or whatever, in the desert. He wanted to he wanted to bring them back to Hyrule or whatever because they were banished to the desert for whatever reason. And then having the spirit of Demise pushing him inside, he was willing to go through and do all of this stuff. He cursed the Deku Tree, he locked up all of the Gorons, he froze Lake Hylia, or he dried
Zora's
out
domain.
Lake Hylia, he froze Zora's domain, to get what he wanted. And then the Triforce of Power is what lets him, I would say, access the beast form of Ganon as like a last resort or whatever. So that's what I think. Like, I think Ganondorf is just his own person, and then Ganon would be like the demon or the spirit that's
corrupted.
Possessing him, pushing him along. And then
that makes sense.
In A Link Between Worlds, we have what's his name? Yuga that transforms into his own version of Ganon. And I don't think it's the, like, obviously it's not Ganondorf transforming into Ganon, but I think it's still the spirit of Demise, which A Link Between Worlds was the first Zelda game to come out after
Hyrule Historia.
That and Skyward Sword.
Yes.
So it was like the whole concept of the reincarnation, the spirit taking over different people or whatever, being reincarnated, was set in Skyward Sword, and then the Hyrule Historia came out around the same time, and then we got A Link Between Worlds. So with it being the first game to come after, it kind of makes sense for now Yuga is the one who this spirit is possessing or whatever, pushing to do these bad things. And when Yuga, does he use the Triforce of Power? Or what is it? What does he use to transform?
I think he actually, in the game, he opens the seal that Ganon was in, and Ganon does rise out of that, and he attempts to pull the Triforce of Power from Ganon, if I'm remembering correctly. It's actually been like a few years since I played the game, but I believe he tries to pull the Triforce of Ganon out, or Triforce of Power from Ganon, and ends up becoming, like, sort of merging with him and becoming Yuga Ganon. I don't know what the... and then he sort of, Ganon then sort of has some of Yuga's features, like his hair and stuff, and his skin tone is different.
Alright, so it's like Yuga's version of Ganon.
Basically. So I think that could be, if we're following your theory, the moment where he's trying to basically just pull the power from Ganon. It could be even that he was still going along with, spoilers if you guys haven't played this game from years ago, Princess Hilda's plan, but then he gets corrupted by this spirit of Demise when he's trying to pull this Triforce out from Ganon, and then he ends up backstabbing Hilda.
Alright, so
I like your theory, Jesse.
Okay, and then to go further, I think the Ganon... Well, first off, after Twilight Princess, there's Four Swords Adventures, I believe. And
now,
in
doesn't
that
game It's a different Ganondorf, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a like every version of Link is typically different Link, unless it's like Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask or Wind Waker, Phantom Hourglass, whatever.
Yeah.
So, but it's always the same Ganondorf in Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Ocarina of Time. But in Four Swords Adventures, I believe it's Four Swords Adventures, not Four Swords.
I believe so. That's correct.
There is Ganondorf in it, but it is a separate Ganondorf. It is a new reincarnation of Ganondorf, whereas Link is typically a new reincarnation of Link. So all the other Zelda games has the same Ganon and the same Ganondorf, but this one is the first time that it's a new Ganondorf, which he has a very distinct look to him in this game. So it kind of
still similar,
makes sense.
but a different design still. I think he's a little less stocky. Yeah. Like a little bit leaner.
It looks more like a vampire.
It does, especially with that huge popped collar.
Yeah. So, my thought to make the whole theory a little bit shorter is that I think Ganon in Breath of the Wild is in the same way that in Skyward Sword, Demise had his pure energy evil monster form as the imprisoned. Like it was just the giant beast. Breath of the Wild has its giant beast form of Ganon, which is, well, just Ganon that we see in that game. So I think that's what it is. It's just like the pure evil spirit manifesting as this beast. So I think it's the same Ganon from Twilight Princess, but I don't necessarily think that it's Ganondorf, because I always looked at it as like Ganon was the spirit possessing Ganondorf or whatever, and I don't know why Ganondorf would sacrifice himself to let the spirit of Ganon live on, because if he's dead, like I look at it as like the Ganon is Demise and then Ganondorf is just the person.
Yeah.
Similar,
that's sort of like the host's body.
Yeah, similar to like Zelda carries the spirit of Hylia. In the same way that Ganondorf carries the spirit of Demise. So if Zelda died, sacrificed herself, then the spirit of Hylia would eventually just live on and like take another form or whatever, like be reincarnated again. But that specific version of Zelda would be dead. Ganondorf is the same way. If Ganondorf sacrificed himself, then that one form of Ganondorf would die, and then the spirit of Ganon would go on to like be reincarnated as like another version of Ganon or Ganondorf or whatever, which is what we've seen with the Four Swords Ganondorf being a different version of Ganondorf from Twilight Princess.
Yeah.
So I don't know why Ganondorf would sacrifice himself to give all the power to Ganon when Ganon wouldn't necessarily be him.
I always saw it in Ocarina of Time, at least, as sort of a last resort thing, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas he's like, okay, I can't beat him. I'm going down. Like I need. And he's just sort of angry, and there's this rage thing, and then it's sort of a last resort, and maybe not even necessarily by will transforming, but just sort of out of this.
Well,
in
Ocarina of Time, he like Ganondorf, like he basically with his last breath before he dies, he brings down the castle, and then by using the power of like the Triforce of Power is how he transforms into Ganon.
So yeah, definitely in that game at the very least seems like a last resort thing.
Yeah.
But then in Wind Waker, we see an older, more sort of sad Ganon, who's a little less power hungry than in say Twilight Princess, and he's sort of a more I like to call him Old Man Ganon in that game, because he's not like this conqueror warrior that you see in Twilight Princess, where he's like a warmonger almost. But he still like has his goals. But he's very reflective on the past. Like you see in that cutscene, it's a very humanizing moment for this villain, right?
Yeah.
Where he talks about wanting to bring his people out of the desert and coveting the green lands of Hyrule and how hard it was to grow up in the desert. And that is again when he does not transform into Ganon. And again, like it could be because he had the opportunity, but he lost the Triforce of Power right before that fight because the King of Hyrule wished on it. But it could also be because he's not, he might not be possessed by this evil spirit anymore. Maybe the spirit of demise has gone on to start living in, or like to sort of take control of the villain we see in Phantom Hourglass, like Bellum or Maladus in Spirit Tracks.
Yeah.
Zelda villains, they're all, you know what I've noticed, there's this trend in Zelda games that if you have your game which features Link versus Ganon, and then you have a sequel with the same Link versus a side villain, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have like Zelda 1 against Ganon, and then Zelda 2 where it's, well, there's no real like one villain, there's like Dark Link at the end, but
yeah.
Then you have Ocarina of Time against Ganon, and then you have Majora's Mask against the Skull Kid, and then you have
A Link to the Past.
Link to the Past, and then A Link's Awakening against the Nightmare, and then you have
A Link Between Worlds,
Wind Waker,
Triforce Heroes.
Yeah, and then you have Wind Waker, and then Phantom Hourglass. So it's just like this sort of like, if you have the same Link, you need to like get a little side villain that comes in.
Well, like in a way, villain. It's like, since it is a direct sequel, if you kill Ganon in Game 1, and then it's like, well,
what's the point of bringing him back?
3 months later, he magically comes back.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, that made the first game completely pointless.
But it also means you have to take Link out of Hyrule then, as well, which is also what happens. So Zelda 2 might be the only exception where you're sort of in Hyrule, but there's more Hyrule that you didn't explore in the first game.
Yeah.
But in the other games, it's like you just leave Hyrule, except for the most important game that I didn't mention yet, which is Link's Crossbow Training. Very important game.
Nice.
No, I'm kidding. I'm joking, Jesse. Well, we should move on to the second question, because we spent all this time on just one question.
Yeah.
So our next question is still on YouTube. Comes from Cosplay Frost Dragon. This is direct towards you, Jesse. So why don't you give it a? I don't know.
Cosplay Frost Dragon on YouTube says, "Hey, Game Over Jesse," or R something. R just Jesse. Have you ever? Okay. Hey, Game Over Jesse, or just Jesse. Have you ever noticed that the Great Plateau and the Lost Woods seem to match in length and size, and almost identical if you were to switch places with the Great Plateau and the Lost Woods? Would it make more sense for that to be switched for the placements and the locations of Hyrule? I want to know the thoughts, the theories, what you think you love your channel, by the way. Well, thank you, Cosplay Frost Dragon. We work really hard on the channel. And to answer your question, first, I need to look up the map for Hyrule and Breath of the Wild, because I never noticed they were the same size or anything.
Yeah. You know, I think that it does make sense how it is, because if we're trying to match this up with other Zelda maps, first of all, that's hard, man. The geography is never super consistent. But in A Link to the Past and A Link Between Worlds by extension, the map somewhat lines up with Breath of the Wild, where you have Death Mountain in the top right, the Lost Woods directly west of that, then you have Zora's Domain to the south of Death Mountain, Lake Hylia to the very south of the map, and the desert to the southwest. So if you just take those, and Hyrule Castle in the middle with a river that goes around. So if you just take those landmarks, it lines up actually pretty well. But there's so much more stuff in Breath of the Wild that it's really hard to just line it up with other Zelda maps. You know, there's too much going on in that game, which is a good thing, good problem to have. But
yeah, I think this question, and if you're watching this, please let us know. But I think this stems from Ocarina of Time, where in Ocarina of Time, the Temple of Time is north of the map, and the Lost Woods is south of the map, or the Kakiri Forest is south of the map. So in this game, it switched. The Kakiri Forest is north of the map, or Korok Forest is north, and then the Temple of Time is south on the map. So maybe that's what this is stemming from. But in every game, Hyrule Castle has always been north of where you start, or in the center.
Sort of like the middle north area.
Yeah, like in Ocarina of Time, it was like full north. Twilight Princess, it was the middle, but it's always north of where you start. In this game, it's north of where you start as well. The Lost Woods seems to fall in place with where... No, I was going to say it seems to fall in place with like the Sacred Meadow or whatever, where you get the sword in Twilight Princess. Because it's north it's north of Wardon Village, but it's not as far north as everything else.
But if we're trying to match it up with Ocarina of Time's map, then the problem is then the Lost Woods is right beside Lake Hylia, and then that doesn't work. You would need to switch the placement of the Great Plateau and Lake Hylia to make it match where you have the Lost Woods and then Lake Hylia more to the west, and then next to the desert.
Death Mountain is where it always...
It's pretty consistent. Death Mountain is always, pretty much always to the north.
Gerudo Desert is where it always seems to be.
If you really want to line up maps, we were talking about this before, but cosplay Frost Dragon, get your A Link to the Past map out, and then take Ocarina of Time's map and just rotate it 45 degrees, and then suddenly everything lines up. Just a thought, just putting that one out there, but... Then you have Twilight Princess just really messes things up, and the big enigma in all of these maps trying to match them up is usually the Temple of Time is like the big deal breaker because of its placement in Ocarina of Time is right by Hyrule Castle in Castle Town, like within Castle Town, and then in Twilight Princess it's in the Lost Woods, and then in Breath of the Wild and then in Skyward Sword it's basically still in the Lost Woods, because it gets built over the Sealed Temple. And then in Breath of the Wild, it's in the Great Plateau, and the Lost Woods is a separate location elsewhere again. So it's really, like, you have to take the geography with a grain of salt, usually.
Yeah.
Do I still have you, Jess? Oh, there you are.
Yeah, I was just listening. My explanation, I talked about this with Daniel a little bit before we started, but I most of the time whenever I get a geography based question, although they are interesting when things do line up, it makes you think that the developers put a little bit of fan service into the layout. But there was an interview a while back with Al Numa or Miyamoto, one of the two. It was a long time ago. I think it was around the time Skyward Sword was being released. They mentioned that the reason that, like, in one game, if we look at Ocarina of Time, for example, Ocarina of Time had Lake Hylia in the southwest part of the map. And it was a lot smaller. It looked very different, and it had different like a different landscape and sculptures and everything in it than you would find in Lake Hylia and Twilight Princess, which is just 100 or a few hundred years after Ocarina of Time. So, like, in the two games, Lake Hylia is in two completely different places. They are completely different sizes. One is completely huge compared to the other. One has there's just, like, so much different with them. Even Hyrule Field is a lot different. Kakariko Village is in different areas. Death Mountain looks completely different. They said the reason that from one game to another, even though it's supposed to be the same Hyrule, the reason they, in one game, they might put the Hyrule Castle at the north part of the map, and the next game it might be in the center. Lake Hylia might jump from the southwest to the northeast. The Gerudo Desert might jump from like the southwest of the map to like the far east of the map. And then not only do the locations change, but what you find in them, the size of them, what's around them, everything changes because Nintendo feels that if it was the same, if Hyrule Castle or like if Lake Hylia was in the southwest every single game, then it would ruin the experience of exploring, because you would expect, hey, okay, this is where Lake Hylia is, so I'll go there, it'll look the exact same, it'll basically be like you're playing through the same map over and over and over. So they change it.
And that's kind of a gameplay ruiner in a game that, or franchise that's built so much around like exploration and discovery.
So they change it in their own words, because if it was the same every time, players would get bored. So they try to keep it fun by changing it up, but they will still put in certain aspects that will seem familiar. Like you go to Lake Hylia, and there's always the waterfall, because that's what people look forward to. There's always the water temple somewhere in Lake Hylia. There's if you see Kakariko Village, then you know to expect Gorons or Death Mountain to be somewhere
or chickens.
Close.
You know to look for chickens.
So like they change the way areas look, they change the way they're located, where they are on the map, but they try to keep some of the features similar. That way you don't go to Kakariko Village in one game and it's completely different in another game. Although it may look different and be like on the different side of the map, they still want it to have some sort of familiarity. So that's why it changes
oftentimes
so
some of
much.
these landmarks are not actually the same place sometimes. Like Kakariko Village in Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess are not the same village, for sure.
Yeah.
Because there's the secret village in Twilight Princess that used to be the old Kakariko. And then we know that Breath of the Wild's Kakariko, I believe, is also a new Kakariko village.
That goes back to what I was saying, though, is like...
So,
in,
there's that air
Twilight
of familiarity.
Princess, like, in Twilight Princess, they make it seem like Kakariko Village from Ocarina of Time was actually the secret village.
Yeah.
And then Kakariko Village in Twilight Princess was a new version of Kakariko Village. But Kakariko Village in Ocarina of Time is located next to Death Mountain, where New Kakariko Village is also located.
It's in the same spot, or pretty close, yeah.
So this goes back to what I was saying, is where Kakariko Village in Ocarina, or where Secret Village in Twilight Princess is supposed to be Kakariko Village from Ocarina of Time. What they do is, like, even though it's hinted that it's the same village, it's changed locations.
But because of that, like, it could still be a different village. You don't know, like...
Yeah.
It could have been there was Kakariko Village in Ocarina of Time, and then it got destroyed or something happened, and then there was a new Kakariko, and then that became the hidden village, and then they rebuilt Kakariko again. Like, who knows, right? I know there was, like...
Kakariko from Ocarina of Time is still one of my favorite.
It's a good one. I'm partial to the A Link to the Past and A Link Between Worlds one because of nostalgia reasons, but I really like Breath of the Wild's version of the village as well. But again, like, it's Ocarina for sure not the same village.
I liked Ocarina of Time's Kakariko Village because there were the different levels. Like, there was the house where you find Milan's father, where he's like sleeping. There's the chicken in the box right in front of it, and that's like on the ground level. And then there's like the graveyard in the back. There's the trail that leads up to Death Mountain. And then like there's the windmill that has its secrets with the heart pieces and stuff. There's like the holes that you can bomb and find to go down into the caves or whatever. There's always that house that never lets you in. So you're always like, well, who lives there? Why can't I go in?
Yeah. And there's the Skulltula house.
Right.
Where
so there's like all of the, and there's like different physical levels too. Like there's the first level, the ground level, and then you can go up any of the staircases and get to like the second level of the village, but then there's like the third level where you go up the second set of steps, and like it's just really cool the way it's laid out, and you haven't really seen that. Like Twilight Princesses, both Kakariko villages I thought were kind of boring because they were so, like one was really compact, and it seems like you just pass through it to get...
It's like a thoroughfare, basically, not really a village. Yeah.
And then...
Whereas the hidden village is like, there's nothing to do there but talk to chickens.
Yeah. Breath of the Wilds was really great. For like what it was trying to make. There were like the different vertical aspects to it that I liked. And then there was...
But I find... like, I personally liked Hateno Village a little more. And I thought that, like, from the trailers, I did like a video like way back when we only had some trailers about one of the trailers, the Switch event trailer, and then that one I talked about, like there was a little clip of Hateno Village, and I thought that was going to be Kakariko for that game, but it was not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright, so are we ready to move on to the next question?
Yes.
All right.
But there's only one thing I need to say about Kakariko still. Sorry.
Right.
Real quick side note. It took me probably like 18 years after Ocarina of Time was released to notice that there are two different Kakariko Village songs. So when you go as Child Link versus Adult Link, there's two different versions of the music that plays.
In Ocarina?
Yeah. And I did not notice that until like within the last 5 years, like very recently.
Is one faster or...
It's just one is like there's different instrumentation. That's the only difference.
Okay.
So one is like on a guitar and the other is on I don't remember, but it took me years to even notice, and I was like, how did I not see it all these years? All right. Let's move on.
So our next question comes from Ashley Icona, or Champion Ashley, as a lot of people may know for her YouTube channel. Says, King Bergeson, Game Over Jesse, what do you guys want to see in the Pokemon game for the Switch?
You know what? I really liked... I've been playing Pokemon Sun for the first time, like, this week. And I have really liked that there's the whole, like, Alolan forms of different Pokemon that are... Like, you see Rattata in other games, and it's the same, but then Rattatas in Alola are a little different. Like, they just have a slightly different appearance. And I really like that, because, like, that's a legit thing that actually happens in the real world with animals, where they have just slightly different, like, geese. There's, like, your regular white geese, but then Canadian geese are different. They're brown and black. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, but they're still geese.
Tell me more from your native heritage of Canada.
It's cold up here.
This foreign land of mystery.
But I mean, like, we're like neighbors, man. Like, I can drive 4 hours to Seattle from where I live, right? But there's, like, just in different regions, the animals are slightly different. So that's just something I really liked. Like, a nice detail that set Pokemon Sun and Moon apart from other Pokemon titles is this sort of, like, regional difference between Pokemon here versus in other regions. And also, like, I just really enjoyed the game. But yeah, what do you think, Jesse?
So you're wanting more real world evolutions of Pokemon?
Yeah, just sort of like the regional variations I thought was really neat, you know?
I want to see, graphically, it would be fine. I did video comparisons on this. I took the 3DS version of the Pokemon Sun and Moon and then used an emulator to render them in HD just to see what a potential Switch version would look like. This was when the Pokemon Stars was being heavily rumored.
That would have been cool, by the way.
Yeah, I think that the way it looked on 3DS, just rendered in HD, looked really great. So they wouldn't even have to use like a new engine or anything.
Yeah, maybe just clean up like some of the textures, but other than that, like it could work just fine.
like put HD textures in it, and then like if they wanted to have higher detailed character models that actually took advantage of the power the Switch has, as opposed to the far inferior power of the 3DS, that would be really great. So like the look of the game is already great. It could only get better, which is a good thing, because I don't think they can make it look worse than it does on the 3DS, which the 3DS version already looks amazing. And like they could do something very similar to where like the South Park games that are coming out on PlayStation 4, and even the Stick of Truth that came out on the PlayStation 3 and PC and everything, that looks identical to the cartoon. Games like what was it? Ni no Kuni look like identical to an anime. Breath of the Wild almost looks like an anime. Super Mario Odyssey looks like a cartoon. So with this Pokemon game, they could use the power of the Switch to make it look almost identical to the way that the actual cartoon or anime of Pokemon looks, which would be really great.
Although if we took it in the other direction, like Pokken Tournament, it totally does not look cartoony. Like they really like high-resed all these Pokemon, and I thought it looked really good. But like personally, I always go more in the style of sort of that cel-shaded or cartoony aesthetic over realism. That's my preference.
My favorite video game style is like if you look at Final Fantasy 15,
right,
to where it looks like a really, really detailed anime. Like it doesn't look cartoony, it doesn't look realistic, but it looks like the way an anime would look if someone took their time to like really make it look great.
But like I find like until Breath of the Wild, Wind Waker and then Wind Waker HD were like my opinion like some of the best looking games ever.
Wind Waker
like,
HD
I really
looks...
love the look, the aesthetic of those games.
See, that's
and
why
then Rhyme looks really good.
Yeah, I mentioned Ni no Kuni. Have you ever seen that game?
No, I haven't.
Okay, well, I mentioned it because the first one released on PlayStation 3.
Right.
And, like, Wind Waker was the only real game that I had played where it tried looking like a cartoon or an anime. And then Ni no Kuni came out on the PlayStation 3, and it looked like it just copied that same art style, but did it even better because it was on better hardware and everything. But then Wind Waker HD comes out, and it's like...
Oh, it's like so good looking.
Yeah.
The game looks amazing. Like because it's timeless. That's the thing is with... Twilight Princess came out after Wind Waker, and they went for a more... You know, Twilight Princess still has like almost those anime looking characters and stuff. They went for that more realistic look, which Aonuma even came out at a forthright and said, I want to make a realistic Zelda. But like the Wind Waker totally outlived it graphically, because in a year what's top the line realistic graphics now is outdated, like in a year basically. Whereas now Breath of the Wild I think is like one of the best looking games I've ever seen, because it has this graphical style that is gonna be timeless like Wind Waker was.
All you have to do is like in 5 years release a higher... Well, in 5 years Nintendo could probably do like a 4K version on their next console.
Oh yeah.
And then they don't have to really change any of the textures or anything.
So good.
Yeah, like just up the resolution and then it looks better. Almost like what they did with Twilight Princess. Like with Wind Waker HD, they changed a lot of the stuff. Like they used a different engine. They did a bunch of stuff to actually make it look better. They changed the lighting and everything.
Doesn't Wind Waker HD have Breath of the Wild's lighting engine? I think that was one of the things. They were testing the lighting engine while developing Breath of the Wild, and then they were testing it on these character models, and they saw it on Toon Link, and they were like,
I think it looks better. But a lot of people complained that Wind Waker HD has like the lighting and everything ruined.
Is like too much bloom for them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it looks great. I just like, I love it. I love the look of that game.
Yeah. Anyways,
Yeah.
Pokemon.
Yes,
Got
Pokemon.
carried off with Zelda. Pokemon. Visually, I would want it to look similar to 3DS or better, more like the anime. Or if they took it like a completely new style and made it look like I mentioned Final Fantasy games looked, where it looks like a really detailed anime. Gameplay wise, I think Sun and Moon is great already. I would love it if you've seen the Pokemon out, like walking around and stuff, as opposed to just getting into a bush and like finding a random battle.
So that's the thing is, like, in RPGs, I'm not really into random encounters like that. And I like, it's fine, I'll live with it. But like, one of my favorite RPGs is Earthbound. And one of the things in that is that the random encounters, like, you can just you can avoid them, because you will see the enemies. It won't just be like, oh, suddenly random encounter, and then da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and you get into the fight.
Yeah.
You can, and I think the same thing is with Zelda too, is you have the opportunity to avoid it. It's on the map, like, it's in the game until you actually have to come into contact with that enemy in order to start the battle.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd love to see that too, Jesse. I agree with that.
Yeah, because with Final Fantasy X, which I really liked that game on PlayStation 2, whenever I was playing it, I was like, it would be really cool if it wasn't just random. If it wasn't an invisible enemy that you walked into, if you could actually see them. And then in Final Fantasy 12, which Final Fantasy 11 was like a early MMO, so it wasn't necessarily the next Final Fantasy game. But Final Fantasy 12 was. And in that game, I believe it was the first one where Square Enix started putting the monsters on screen before you went into battle. So you could see the monsters and you could choose to go up to them or walk away. And now with Final Fantasy 15, it's perfectly seamless. Like, the monsters are just there in the overworld. There are no random battles. You can avoid any monster you want to. You still have to level up and everything, but like, but you're not just walking in an empty field and then suddenly you're fighting this 50-foot monster. Like, you see dozens of 50-foot monsters walking around. You see enemies flying around in the sky. You see little wolf enemies running on the ground. You can choose to avoid them, or you can see them running to attack you. And it's like Zelda, or Kingdom Hearts, where the enemies are already there. It doesn't transition, they're just there.
That's great for the immersion factor, you know.
So a Pokemon game like that would be really cool, especially if it's like, if you're trying to get a certain Pokemon like a Pikachu, and you see Pikachu off in the distance, and you have to find your way to like sneak up on it, like in Breath of the Wild, how you have to sneak up.
Trying to sneak on a horse.
Yeah, like sneak up on a horse, or the Hinoxes that are sleeping on the ground. You're trying to steal its necklace, weapons, and stuff. Like, if you were playing as your character and you see a Pikachu off in the distance just eating, and then you have to sneak up from like 20 yards away without having the Pikachu notice you. Like, that could be not just a gameplay mechanic to where it helps you catch Pokemon, but it could be a way, like, put into the actual story to where, like, a character's having trouble finding her Pokemon, but it won't come to you because it doesn't know who you are, so you have to sneak up to it, and then suddenly, not only is it a gameplay mechanic, but it's tied into the story.
Yeah, or at least like side quests or...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, like, there's Pokemon like, what was it? Abra. I remember, like, trying to catch Abra or Kadabra in the first Pokemon games. If you attacked them once, they would instantly teleport. So, like, you could sneak up onto them, and if they see you, then they just magically teleport away. So you have to find a way to sneak up behind them to catch them. And then, like, a better online experience, like if you could walk around the world, not like an MMO, but if you shared a world with, like, maybe 10 other people or 9 other people, that would be really cool.
Yeah.
So,
what about like a co-op story then?
That would be really cool.
Yeah.
I don't know if they would
Probably they wouldn't. They don't think they will, but it would be cool.
Yeah, like that would be really, really cool. But and then like the way that they have Pokemon Go right now in real life, to where you can go to these different areas and like one person, like one of your friends or some random person might be the gym leader of a certain place on Pokemon Go. If there were like open gyms in the new Pokemon game on Switch, and then it was like you go there and you would have to either battle them or like a copy of their character.
Right.
So like the they always have the like the Elite Four, and then like the champion. Like after you beat them, you're the Pokemon Master, the Pokemon Champion, or whatever. It would be interesting if like if it was like a real world leaderboards, to where there was an area you could go to and you could battle your Pokemon against theirs to try and beat them, and it was like this person's the champion of Pokemon, whatever the games are going to be called, until someone can beat them.
Now here's another thought that uses a little less like real world multiplayer sort of MMO tie-in stuff, but okay. I can't remember which Pokemon game it is, but it's the second generation one.
Okay.
Where at the end of the game,
Gold and Silver?
The like final boss is actually red from the first game.
Yeah.
And that's like a huge mind-blowing, like, whoa, that's like the game I just played like last year or however long ago. And that was like a big deal, right? So what if there was a way to have it so that it could take data from like your 3DS or something, and at the end of the game you end up fighting your Pokemon Sun or Moon character as like a final boss, and it's all these Pokemon that are probably super powerful because you actually spent the time leveling those guys up, right? But then you could totally cheat and just go into your game and then like put your party as really weak Pokemon, and then but where's the fun in that? But anyways, that would be a neat thing, like, because we know that the Wii U and 3DS could communicate because of Smash Bros. So who knows?
Yeah, and then they have the what is it, Pokemon Box or something like that, where you can upload your Pokemon to online, and then you can like download them onto another 3DS.
So if it could take your, like, say you have your My Nintendo account, so it's registered on you have all your consoles registered on it, right?
Yeah.
So if it just goes into your account online and pulls data from your 3DS game somehow, and then there you go, secret final boss.
That'd be really cool.
That would be.
If they could figure it out.
Feature.
Right. So next question. Hope we answered that for you, Ashley.
Hopefully.
2 questions left. The videos on this channel are funded by supporters on Patreon like you. If you're a fan of this channel and would like to join on videos, receive shoutouts, watch videos early, have your questions answered, or have your topic discussed on our podcast, please consider supporting on Patreon for these and many other rewards for just $1. Shoutouts for this video includes Link Use the Triforce, Rusty Caulfield, Lovable Christie, Give Time 15, Shadow to Us, Robbie Morgan, and Lunarium. I want to thank all of you for everything you have done to help support this channel.